Hi, my name's Johnston. I'm one of the meteorologists based in the Hobart office of the Bureau of Meteorology.
What is the role of the Bureau of Meteorology in preparing for the upcoming fire season?
All right, the upcoming fire season is looking quite interesting, as always. But each year, ahead of the fire season, we meet with multiple times the main fire agencies in Tasmania and other emergency services to give them what we call a pre-season briefing, just letting them know how spring's going, what the current summer outlook is, and the implications that may have weather-wise over the upcoming fire seasons.
From the modelling for 2024-25, what can we expect for the upcoming Tasmanian fire season?
So summer 24-25 in Tasmania looks like it's going to be a very high chance of exceeding average temperatures, both maximum but especially overnight minimum temperatures. The rainfall outlook is a bit more mixed, with an increased chance of slightly above average rainfall in eastern Tasmania and slightly less than normal rainfall expected for western Tasmania. The implication that has on the fire season is that we're still likely to see lots of hot days, but potentially not as dry as some other years for the eastern half of the state.
How is the modelling used to assist agencies such as the fire services and police prepare for high fire danger days?
Weather modelling can happen over different timescales. We've got seasonal outlooks, weekly outlooks, detailed forecasts for the next week ahead. What we tend to do in the lead up to and during the fire season is we have a look at the next 7 to 14 days, and we try and pick what we call a spike day, or a day where there's an increased likelihood of seeing significant weather. That could be when the temperature's quite high, or there's lots of wind around, or especially if it's lots of wind, lots of high temperatures and very little rainfall. That will give us an indication that maybe something's coming up. We take that information, we give it to the fire agencies, who then do their own readiness preparations and staff planning around what to do in that. And as we get closer, we tend to step up our briefing to the various fire agencies in Tasmania to let them know with more or less certainty what we think is going to happen with respect to fire dangers and the way a bad fire day might turn out.
One of the most common questions we get asked by community members in fire-prone areas is, what are the evacuation routes? We asked this question of Commander Elmer, and part of his response is they rely on expert advice to guide their decision-making. What role and advice does BOM provide in supporting response agencies in their decisions?
When an emergency service agency has a decision they need to make about the weather, they can reach out to us. We'll give them a detailed briefing of what's currently happening, what's expected to happen, whether that be the next 5 minutes or the next week, to help with planning and people movement and resource allocation. So, for example, on a bad fire weather day, if the winds are coming from the north, we can let them know if there's going to be a wind change coming up that might push a fire front in a different direction. I'd imagine that kind of information would be quite critical in their plans for moving people away from areas.
What impact is climate change having on Tasmania's fire season?
With the changing climate in Tasmania, we'll likely see the fire seasons starting earlier, ending later. That means that there's a shorter break between the end of the fire season and the beginning of the next one. This effect is probably what you hear from fire agencies talking about a reduction or a shortening of the time that they're able to do some pre-season or post-season burn-offs for fuel hazard reduction.
The modelling mentions higher sea surface temperatures. How does this impact on fire risk?
All around the planet, particularly around Australia and parts of Tasmania, the sea surface temperatures have been rising incredibly so. Last year, we had a quite significant marine heat wave down the east coast of Tasmania, with sea surface temperatures about 3 to 5 degrees above what would be considered normal or average. This coming fire season, it's only looking slightly cooler, so still maybe 3 or 4 degrees above normal. What this does is increase the potential for humid days, so potentially higher humidities, particularly around the coasts. I can't really say how it would influence fire danger days, but what it could do is provide a little bit more fuel to any rain-bearing systems we do see over this summer.
The summer modelling suggests different weather outcomes for eastern and western Tasmania. What impact might this have on Greater Hobart?
So Greater Hobart at the moment falls into the part of the summer outlook that's indicating a chance of exceeding median rainfall. So we might get a little bit more rainfall than a normal summer period. but it's not looking like a significant signal. It's perhaps suggesting something like an extra 20 to 30 millimetres at a rough estimate. So that's really only talking maybe one bigger rain event or one additional rain event for the summer. It's not a strong signal for wet or dry.
What is the current forecast for the Greater Hobart region?
So this summer for the Greater Hobart region, I would expect to see probably more mention of heatwave conditions developing. So not only bad fire weather conditions this summer, but also heatwave conditions, particularly with increased sea surface temperatures around the state. That's going to increase the humidity and will increase things like heat stress and stop us from cooling down overnight. When minimum temperatures stay up, people can't cool off after a hot day.
How and where do community members find current weather warning information?
You can get all your usual weather information as well as warnings from the Bureau's website or app, but also anything that's relevant in an emergency sense that the Bureau issues will be available on Tas Alert as well.